That's it. So welcome everyone to this webinar hosted by Crisp. I'm Joakim Sundén and I'm a partner at Crisp. Crisp is a small boutique consultancy, so no plans of world domination and extreme expansion. That's the boutique part. So we're 25 consultants, all with a long experience in agile and lean and product development, transformation specialists, coaches, trainers, coders, and architects. Yeah, that's us. And we are, of course, super interested in agile transformations, continuous improvement journeys, organizational design, organizational transformations. And personally, I worked 6.5 years at Spotify from 2011, or around 8 to 10 teams, to 2017, or around 200 teams. And I was part of the group developing this approach to agile at scale that later became known as Spotify model. So I remember when we came up with these names, squads and chapters and tribes. So of course, it's especially important or interesting and exciting for me to learn about journeys that has taken some inspiration from that. So I see similar naming and some inspiration from Spotify and Danske Bank, maybe via ways of ING and others. We'll hear more about that, I'm sure. I'm also a customer of Danske Bank since many years, so I have a personal vested interest in this bank doing really well. So super excited to hear more about this. So without further ado, I'll give you Christian Mark Christensen and Simon Kundal. Just take it away, guys.
Thanks, Joakim, and thanks for inviting us. We've really been looking forward to this. Before starting, it would be appropriate to introduce ourselves, and maybe you would like to start, Simon?
Sure. I'm Simon. I'm an agile coach and now trainer at Danske Bank. And I've been in Danske Bank since 2017, where I've been working as an agile coach and been part of this transformation more or less from the beginning. So looking forward to share some learnings with you. And you, Christian?
Thanks. Yes, I've been in Danske Bank nearly 4 years and was starting just before the launch. I've been a consultant myself before and actually did come to Danske Bank because of this transformation where I, as a consultant, was looking for a company that not only was embarking on, let's call it the methodology, but also needed the transformation seen from a cultural perspective. But let's start the presentation, and after that, there is plenty of opportunities to ask us all the questions you would need. Simon and I are working together, but we also represent different perspectives. So I hope you can feel also that when we talk that we don't need to be fully aligned on everything because we have these perspectives. But let's talk about into why Agile probably helped Danske Bank become a better bank. We'll talk about the context, why we did it, what we did it, and how we're doing it. We'll talk about how we steer the transformation and have done it since we started. And lastly, how we have been forced, to be completely honest, to change the way we have organized the coaching effort with changing conditions. So why are we basically transforming Danske Bank? Let's take the next slide, Simon. Don't worry, this is not a big pitch, but it's building up to a story here. because Danske Bank, for those of you, if there is someone that don't know us, are a very old bank. We are the largest bank in Denmark and are okay in the other markets in Scandinavia primarily. But being an old bank in Denmark, we of course have a very proud history of running the bank and do take that responsibility to serve our customers and the community in general very, very high and is regarding that opportunity is with very high ambitions. And the reason for me to start there is not to say how important we are as a bank, but actually to start the story of Danske Bank wanting to be a better bank. So if you take the next slide, Simon. Because where did we actually come from, being Danske Bank running since 1871, starting a lot of the Danish industry that we are running right now, actually. Danske Bank was part of a very, very large money laundering scandal that ran from 15 to around 1819. It was beginning before that, and it was not the proudest moment for a large bank with the story that we had. It was something that happens because a culture in Danske Bank allowed the bank not to mitigate on needed activities around the bank, where we basically were more interested in reaching the goal than the way we reached the goal. And I hope that this is just a bite of international, primarily medias, that it's visible for all. It was also for people in Danske Bank that something needed to happen in order for us to be aligned with the pride of being Danske Bank, but also the way we were running the bank. So now that is settled, let's continue. Because better ways of working were a part of a large strategy that was initialized because primarily also because of the whitewashing scandal. So there were three things that we wanted to improve. First, we would like to improve customer satisfaction. That it was a matter of having faster response and better customer experiences. Second, we would like to be a more engaging and less bureaucratic workplace. And that was very much a matter of breaking down silos, primarily between, let's call it IT and business, and to push decision making as far to the person that actually needed to take the decision. And lastly, we needed and wanted to improve our efficiency and risk to ensure less manual work and lower risk. So also reducing the need for coordination. So these goals are, of course, very much aligned into agile ways of working. And as you can see and probably have noticed, there's a music theme here. And the reason why we have chose this is, of course, that like music, we look at the way we work and think as something we need to practice on. And of course, we have barely started, also even though that we are just on sprint 100, last sprint, I think it was. Let's continue, Simon. So the journey started in January 2020, where we launched the transformation. I came in just before, after the MVP. And what was that with? That was a matter of Danske Bank wanting to see in one domain whether it could be viable for us to run a large enterprise agile model. And I came as a tribe coach in one of the larger tribes. And at that time, when you were a tribe coach, you had agile coaches in a ratio of 1 to 3. So I had, in regards to squads, 8. It was a fairly large tribe. 8 agile coaches to run that specific tribe. And after half a year running the pilot, that was 5 tribes, we had a big launch. And the way it looks, maybe you could unfold that, Simon.
Yes, so again, we are here, Joachim, because we have talked about Spotify, and yes, we teamed up with Boston Consulting Group. We made some cross-functional teams working together, defining the whole setup. And again, the result was something similar to what you see here, something similar to Spotify. So we had a fairly simple tribe design. Again, we have a tribe leadership team. There's a little difference here. We have 3 roles. We have a tribe lead, we have an IT lead, and we have a tribe coach, forming together the TLT, as they are called. Below, we have, of course, our different squads. These consist of cross-functional teams with squad members. We have a product owner for each squad, and we have again these specialized competencies within each squad. And as Christian alluded to, we also had dedicated agile coaches. We didn't have a ratio of 1 to 1 with us, like in the a scrum master to 1 squad. We had an agile coach. The more experienced coaches typically supported 2-3 squads at a time. The more inexperienced agile coaches typically supported 1 to 2 squads. We also introduced a chapter lead role, again as a playing coach. So you are both the HR responsibility for a competency, but you're also a player within your own squad. Again, these are also things we have seen before. But again, this was a whole new take for Danske Bank, where we typically have worked with traditional departments with 1 development manager and 1 team manager. So a completely new learning experience here. We will talk a little more later in a discussion about how we actually did it and the level of interviews, but this was the overall picture we had at launch, at least. So a tribe design, and again, let's jump to some of the numbers when we launched, as you alluded to, Christian, especially for the big scale. So we ended up launching with 26 tribes across, divided into 3 different segments. And we additionally had 19 center of excellences. Again, these are typically capabilities that are either a little scarce or doesn't necessarily fit into the tribe design. So ourselves right now is an example of that, the agile coaching competency. So you can see the level of bureaucracy were reduced heavily on almost every parameter. I think especially the leadership number is interesting to dive into here. Again, we had almost 500 leadership roles, and we replaced it with 459. It doesn't sound like a whole lot, but we have to remember the chapter leads, which take up the majority of this, are now a playing coach. So they are not only leader, they are both developing within their own squad and leading a smaller group of like-minded members of the chapter. So it was a huge improvement that we went, at least from my perspective, to simplify this process. Again, from 7 to 5 layers, it's not a big deal maybe on paper, but in reality, again, there is just closer to decision making. You are closer to the one who have the decision. So it is a very simplified, a more simplified view we are working within, at least. So where are we today in 2024? Again, we are now at 5 strategic entities. We also call them domains, and within a domain, there is a number of tribes. So that is how they are organized right now. So at the moment, we are scaling up and investing again, both into the new strategy, our 2028 strategy. So what we are aiming for now is having 32 tribes actually within the same design. So we are keeping the design, still launching tribes and creating new tribes as needed, because there are more missions to conquer. We are now 350 squads, again, same design, empowered, cross-functional, IT and business combined into one unit here. We still have the chapter model. Again, we are of course experimenting with the role. Again, originally we said it was a 70% doer, 30% leader. I think we have recognized that number is also up for conversation. So that is something we are experimenting and listening to the feedback. We are now at 18 Center of Excellences, and we are still using them. And Christian, you will of course tell us a little about our own Center of Excellence, which is actually how we run the transformation forward now.
Thanks, Simon. And just for information, the numbers you just saw were in the beginning of this year, and also as Simon told, we are heavily ramping up. So what I'd like to talk about now is how we steer the transformation. We are aiming to use data to the largest extent possible. We are first and foremost from an enterprise perspective using a tool that we have developed together with BCG that we call Enterprise Agile Maturity Assessment, or YAMA. And we actually just ran it. And what we do is that we interview senior management in all domains and in all tribes, TLTs, and ask them, how is it actually going on 10 parameters? And I'll show you the parameters very soon. So that is the top-down perspective. Then we are using external benchmarks that we are so lucky to get also from BCG on the same parameters to see where we are when we compare ourselves with the largest bank running enterprise agile transformations. And then the new kid on the block for us has been ASTI. And that's Agile Squad and Tribe Insights. And that is a normative and bottom-up perspective to develop self-organizing squads. Sorry for reading it out aloud. The thing is that, and I'll show you just in a while why and how we are doing it, but we needed to have a very clear picture on what does good look like when we have scaled down, as you will see, in regards to support for each squad in how they should work with agile methodologies, creating something we call agile champions. But primarily, we are having a top-down assessment that we call YAMA, and a bottom-up assessment that is called ASTI. Both of them is running. ASTI is running 2 times a year, and YAMA 1 time a year. And these two actually is input givers on the larger direction of what we are doing. Of course, YAMA is the most important on the larger things, and ASTI on the small improvements in the squats. But on an aggregated level, ASTI, of course, can be used to find out is there any larger activities we need to run to improve our general maturity. Yes, let's take it. Simon, thanks. So just as a snippet, an example of us communicating to our senior leadership, because they are also a part of improving our maturity and to foster a good dialogue. ASTI is 10 parameters we are practicing on right now. And we say that it is normative. It is that in the sense that dependent on what kind of level the squad are in, ask them to have a dialogue around. So where are we in, let's take the first example, decision power in the squad. And we basically want the squad to have a dialogue around, so where do you think you are, and what could you do to improve here? And this is the old result from last year. What we do is here that we've seen, for instance, that we need to come closer to our customers, because in general, that is a thing we need to focus on. And we need to, let's take the last example of improving own processes. We need to begin to solve root causes and not just to, iron and think each issue is solved when we basically haven't solved the root causes in the squads. So what we do with this on a enterprise level, because this is, all squads have their own dialogues, and we will get an improvement or develop an improvement backlog that they discuss. We use this to see again if there's anything we need to do as a collective. And this is also a matter of the dialogue that we want to have vertically. So the domain that Simon was talking about, it could be personal customers as a whole throughout the bank. The domain lead there needs to ask the tribe leads, that is the business part of the development organization. So how is it actually going to, or for you to get closer to the customers? And that is the dialogue that we want to fluctuate throughout the organization. The other example we are having with you is YAMA. And just to show you the first results we had there in 2022, we both have, as far as I remember, no, we don't have the external benchmark here, but we created an agile house to make it easy for us to have a dialogue around what kind of process is it that we need to improve on. And this also shows the vast injection basically of agile in Danske Bank, because it is in all these parameters that we are working on the agile transformation. So it's both on the purpose and the strategy and on our priorities. It's on governance and funding. It's on our structure. It's on our processes. It's on our culture, behavior, and leadership. It's on our talent, skills, and people practices. It's on everything we measure, and on our technological enablers. What we do here is that we take the two metrics, the top down and the bottom up, and then we see after patterns if there is anything we need to improve on as a collective, and that kind of decides the given year's focus areas or themes in regards to agile improvement areas. Let's continue, Simon. So everything is nice and dandy when nothing happens, because then we can improve, and the world is beautiful. But sometimes there is other perspectives on how we can use our money. And would like to talk a little bit into how we have actually changed the way we look at changing conditions, and in specific, how we have changed our agile coaching operating model. So let's just take the first snippet. When we in 23 ran or had run the agile transformation, we could see that our ABR, annual business review, so that's our strategic guidance and tool for finding out what do we want to achieve in a given year, and our QBR, that's technical processes following up on it every quarter, quarterly business review. That was actually embedded pretty good. It was pretty aligned, and we actually in 23 had a well aligned process that we felt good about. The second thing was that because we've actually poured quite many resources in regards to tribe coaches and agile coaches, you can have, of course, an opinion on that, and it's completely okay. In the tribes, we had a very, very hard vertical focus on both domains and tribes in regards to support. There was a lot of local interpretation. So imagine you are having a development area on 4,000 people. We have some governance that ask people to do something, but every time, and it was intentionally I said but, every time something is kind of being distributed out in the organization, for instance, how we use QBR, how we use ABR, but more important, how we interpret the use of OKRs, how we break down our task and so on, then it scatters, and that actually enable us or disable us to have a more enterprise agile direction change. So empowerment in tribes were hard or strong. And next thing, Simon, we was hit by a need from the top that you need to look at your operating model and see if we can make the coaching effort more efficient, because some of the money needs to be used elsewhere on activities that has a high importance also. So, and one of them was Forward 28. But of course, it doesn't pay for the whole here. But that's not the perspective either. We needed actually to change our agile operating model while also using 1 billion Danish kroner more, because in the end of 23, we came out of Better Bank. We were still running better ways of working. That's the area Simon and I are working in. Of course, because we also want to strive to be better all the time. but we actually believed in the end of 23 that we did become a better bank, and now we needed to go forward in order to reach new markets again, with scaling the digital focus with additional people using 1 billion more in our development area in total. So what did we do, Simon? What we had before was a strong vertical focus. I started as a tribe coach, and I had first a agile coach per 3 squads. After a year, we saved some money, to be completely honest, and made a new a cap on how many coaches we had. So that was 5 squads. 1 coach per 5 squad. And what we actually changed was that we went over to a horizontal supported model. And that means that one thing that was not super horizontal is we still have the tribe coaches. It's extremely important for us to have a strong foothold in each tribe, but they more orchestrate that something is happening in the tribes in regards to change efforts now. Before they had the direct operational task, now they need to orchestrate that something we call specialized agile coaching chapters is supporting on some activities that we want to succeed with. And that's a scale of 1 to 10. So that's just continue, Simon. Completely okay. But let me talk a little bit into how do our specialized chapters look like. The first thing is that we, if you can press again, Simon, we have agile governance that is actually untouched as a whole. It is some people that enable QBR and ABR to run. So let's not dive too much into that. It's not populated with agile coaches. We still have tribe coaches going in the verticals, or focusing on the verticals. But we also created something we called agile deployment. So that was a matter of, depending on where you had the most important activities in the bank and who needs the most help, we throw, use a word like that, or help with agile deployment where needed. That's also seen other places. Second thing, we are having WOW Mastery, that is our large training area. Simon is a part of that. He's doing really good. And the task, or one of the tasks for this year is to onboard 700 people, and that is doing actually quite good. We have a lot of new consultants in India and Infosys, where we are ramping up with around 1,200 people, and the rest in Denmark and the Nordics. So that's our mastery training efforts. We have flow and outcome, and that's a matter of strengthening insights in regards to being more outcome driven, but also having an aligned way to look at flow throughout all tribes. And then we have self-organization. So imagine that you don't have Scrum Masters, you don't actually have agile coaches being able to help. But if you have coached the squad, of course, you need to go into the process with the purpose of going out so they can organize their own work. And we have kind of tried to set that to a formula where we take some people of each squad and train them as much as we can, and they are kind of the entry point to continuous agile growth in that specific squad. And it's actually working out very, very, very well. So in Self-Org, they are 10 agile coaches handling actually it's 385 squads across the whole bank as it looks now. Yes, that is how we organized today. Was that the last slide, Simon? It was.
Yes.
I kind of sensed it. So with that, any other comments, Simon? I've probably forgot something.
No, again, this picture here is how our COE today is organized, and the people in it are mostly of us are what identify as agile coaches. So we have each our mastery here, as you can see, and it's a really cool way to really both grow as an individual, but also to support the organization on different important aspects here. But yes, Joachim, I think I'll throw the ball to you.
Okay, thank you. Super interesting. I am going to kick off Menti so that you can ask questions. So hopefully participants, people in the audience understand how a Menti works. Otherwise it's easy. You just go to menti.com on your phone or your computer and use this code to enter this code, and you will be able to enter questions that you can then use thumbs up to upvote other people's questions. And while you do that, I'm going to seize the opportunity to ask a few questions myself. So we heard that you instituted this better ways of working because you wanted to improve customer satisfaction, you wanted a more engaging and less bureaucratic workplace, break down silos, empower decision making. So can you tell us a little bit about how were you successful? What have you accomplished so far? Do you have any results to show for? Maybe you have unintended results or positive results.
Would you like to start, Simon?
No, I think you would like to start.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So one of the things that we are most proud of is that we actually had a raise in the engagement on 5%, and that is with a quite large change for the people that was involved in this. Just as how hard the alignment has been before, we had the kind of 4,500 people. We scaled down because we also had some cost cut in this regard. 4,500 people have 3,600 different kind of titles. So imagine that you sit and you have your title and it's probably well earned, and now the bank suddenly have a good idea that we want to align also on titles. So all that was changed. So we now maybe have 100 titles in total, but only 20 chapters. The reason why I say this is that it could give an impression of it's a large change for the individual. They were primarily, we had agile areas, of course, before that, but they were primarily working in a project world. And for them it was a huge change suddenly to work in cross-functional squads and tribes with IT or business. It depended on of course where they came from. So that is one of them. The silos were broken, and they are still. some of the slides you saw here was shown to the ELT kind of after year one of the transformation, and our ELT had never before in the bank's life seen that we can be able to create the transparency that we're actually having here, because before it was very, very foggy to find out how's it actually going. So that is some of the results that we've had. And of course, yeah, I talked about cost cut. Yes, we also had that, and that was around 16% in regards to that.
Nice.
Which was also a part of the Better Bank being more efficient.
Yeah.
And we have no problems in being more efficient and running agile.
Great.
At the same time.
Simon, did you want to add something, or?
No, I think I'm just reflecting again what again I think one important thing that you don't see as a result is that we have this one structure, right? Not that everyone is working exactly the same way, but we have the same language. We don't have 5 different ways of developing. We have this heartbeat throughout all squads again, and for 99% of the squads, this is really a good fit because we are synchronous. We can easily tap into each other. We know the process or the frameworks we are working with. Again, we have this. It is called the field guide, where we have documented the whole process, or our framework and our ways of working. It is 95% Scrum added with a few layers that are needed for a large organization, of course. But it's such a strong benefit now that we have the shared language. There's no project or waterfall model that we also have to tap into or other systems. We have this one model now, and I think it's really powerful, and we are seeing the benefit of it now that it's so simplified.
Speaking about shared language and one model, and given my background, I'm of course curious. Why Spotify model? Why tribes and chapters and chapter leads? I know you work with Boston Consulting Group, but can you give us a little bit more detail and flavor to that?
Yeah. So the model. So who took this decision also? Because that's kind of also where it starts. And we were so lucky. To be completely honest, this was not a bottom-up idea. It was a top-down strategic priority that we wanted to have better ways of working. So what do top management in a very large bank do in order for them to verify that the direction that they are taking is kind of aligned with a good idea, and that is to look for competitors or colleagues out in the world who has run activities like this. And they looked at Ing and ABN AMRO, and we also have senior leadership from those companies that had experience with this. So basically, it was a case-driven approach where who ran those transformations. A success has many fathers, and BCG at least were on at least on one of them. So they had the good experience also to run this in a quite complex technical setup that a old bank is, because our technical stack is super deep. So we could not do all the cool stuff that we, of course, been reading about, Joachim, that Spotify in order to create, a completely cross-functional unit that can deliver customer value. It is not possible in a bank like us that has 150 years we don't have an IT stack that's 150 years old. It can feel like that sometimes, but we need to collaborate across the bank. So we also needed to find out who had experience in running a large agile enterprise in that way, and that was BCG. That was ABN AMRO and Case.
And I would say from an agile coach perspective, we didn't cry about it was the Spotify model, let's say it like that. We were just happy they didn't choose SAFe or let's say another scale framework. So it was not really a decision that was challenged. I think again, the implementation and teaming up with a consultancy like BCG was definitely helpful. And again, as I said earlier, we made cross-functional teams. So we had both BCG employees and Danske Bank agile coaches working together on a daily basis on different tracks. And yes, they came with a lot of knowledge. They also came with a lot of theory and PowerPoints, as they are known for. But we have the opportunity to own this ourselves. So we decided what went into the field guide with their perspective, of course. And we did make some radical changes to not necessarily Spotify, but at least the recommendations. So, and again, and I think we delivered also or worked on it as an agile, you can say, product, the transformation. So we had a vision, we know where we wanted to go, but we built the pieces as we went along. And yes, Spotify model helped some foundational structures, but then we also used BCG and our own experiences.
Right, and continuing a little bit on this track before I let other questions in. So one reason why we're doing this today is because I know you, Simon, from the excellent Agile community and Agile Aarhus, where I had the opportunity to visit and do talks and so on. But also because I was at your Center of Excellence at Danske Bank in earlier this year. You're now starting these new initiatives and so on. And it was kind of as a little bit of quid pro quo. Then I asked you to then do this. So and some of I did a talk about Spotify model transformations from the trenches, some experience and some learnings, and it was interesting to see in the feedback from the participants that oh, this is what I've been saying for a long time, or it's like listening to a story about ourselves, and so given that, what you now know, if you could go back in time and redo it, what would you do differently, or what would you definitely do the same? Maybe there were some surprising learnings that you didn't think would work, but actually panned out. But in general, what have you learned about this journey?
Is it okay I start, Simon?
Yes, please.
And then let's talk from two perspectives here, because I think that would be interesting. If there's one thing that I hope and that we are working on now, that is that it do not need to be by the book. We created the field guide, but when we look at a issue, we really need to have the perspective of where are the people that we want to move, and then move together with them. We can see that the one that struggles most and did it historically was the one that tried to sell Agile as a Bible. And it's a matter of that we have learned to go to the side of where the change happens from, and then walk together with people. That is one thing. Another thing is the strength in our way we have organized was not super strong, because we spread all the Agile coaches out to each tribe coach. So it was actually not easy for us to cost cut or to save money on agile coaches, because suddenly we found out that the distribution of agile coaches was not super good. And suddenly you had one tribe coach that had one agile coach or two or something like that, and that wasn't super good, to be completely honest. So what we are working on now is that we had these surprises of cost cut, and for every surprise, when I look back, we actually came to a better place. Because yes, it was super annoying to get a cost cut and be forced to be organized in another way, but it actually enabled us to, or forced us to work in another way. So we were forced to create specialized chapters that is kind of looking at the whole organization, aligning operationally, and finding out, so how can we use each other as a collective instead of just optimizing on one vertical. So that is what's happened now. So what we're doing now is, the next time something happens, we are already drawing up the lines of, we are ramping up now, and we do in regards to Forward 28, but we know what our core delivery model is in regards to Agile Enterprise, and that is the specialized chapters. When we are ramping up now, and we didn't talk much into that, the 1,500 extra people that is coming in net on the top, they are being helped operationally with coaches very close. So we are actually also ramping up on agile coaches, of course, but we actually expect to run them off when we have sufficient agile maturity, and then it's back to fully agile champions and so on, when the squads are mature enough.
Okay.
Simon?
Yeah, so I'm thinking what we have learned so far, and I think a symptom that at least are popping up everywhere is what happens when you break the design. And again, originally I cannot remember the number from Spotify. Maybe you can tell that, Joachim, but we had a limit of 150 people, up to 150 people per tribe, because the structures, at least we designed, they kind of fitted. You didn't exceed HR responsibilities. It was still within the normal, what you could expect a chapter lead to have, etc. Right? But what we see is when tribes are succeeding, having good winning mission after mission, they of course grow. So what we have been seeing is that some tribes have exceeded 200 people, even more. And we start to see some anti-patterns coming, and we didn't have a good plan for how to work with these. So we have seen a lot of local sub-optimized, or at least local optimization, but tribes are dealing with it differently. So the question is, should we have done something upfront to mitigate this? There could have been some design principles. Again, what do you do? Again, hopefully we have the courage to break down tribes into smaller tribes, and we are doing that exercise now, but we are probably doing it too late to some degree, because what happens is when we introduce more people, we also automatically start to introduce more layers, and we are seeing these middle managers coming in. We're not calling them middle managers, but we have cluster leads or chief product owners now, or they have some different names in each tribe. So that's something you have to be aware of when you grow, because we have a very good intention when we designed it, but again, things grow organically in different directions. So there's definitely so I cannot remember what your take on the size was, Joachim. Was it also 150?
No, we said actually 100, because Robin Dunbar, the social anthropologist behind the Dunbar number, he said a maximum of 150. But if you look at the fine print or actually study him, it turns out that tribes that were 150 people in size were either faced a threat, an external threat for their survival, or spent almost up to 50% of their time on social grooming. So it was really costly to keep the size of that big of a tribe. But we tried to cap it at 100, but we still also saw the same thing, that the tribes were growing. We actually also had cluster leads. I don't know if you got that from Spotify or invented
of course.
your own.
The tribes have also seen the videos, Joachim.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, but that's introduced just as when an individual team grows too big, they start to form sub teams and make them explicit and call it work streams or mini teams or mission teams and so on. Tribes would start to call it product areas and have some kind of hierarchy between product managers, even if it wasn't on paper. And in the beginning, we thought that was, this is a bad thing. You should split already. But soon we started seeing that as, this is actually something emerging out of the tribes and the teams themselves. They are starting to experiment with low-cost solutions of preparing a split. So we rather started encouraging it. Why not a little bit of work streams and product areas to get them started in thinking about it, and then getting used to the idea of separating and splitting actually, and preparing and developing new leaders, product managers, product area leads that would become tribe leads and so on. Interesting. Yeah. So I want to let others ask questions as well. So we have quite a few here, and some upvoting. So let's take the top voted one first. Which education do you offer to the Agile champions? Is it just another word for a Scrum Master?
Do you want to start, Christian?
Yes, I can do that. So what is a Scrum Master?
Okay, maybe you should not start.
No. But I would like to start there, because the good Scrum Master, what does he do? He take a step back when the squad gets more mature, and maybe the Agile coach does the same, but a little faster. But the direct answer is the way we run it is that the 10 Agile coaches that we are having, they are having 2 or 3 tribes each. And in each tribe, they are running a guild, Agile Champions Guild in the specific tribe. And then they meet, I think it's every 14th day. We have said that it's 10% of your work for the specific Agile champions that goes into training, not into facilitate or whatever it is, because this is just a matter of injecting the behavior of Agile via a person. So we train them every 14th day. Besides that, or the Agile coaches does, self-org coaches call them. We are having Agile festivals. We just had in Copenhagen and Vilnius and Bangalore and Vilnius yesterday, where they gather people physically and then talk about a lot of topics that is needed. That could, for instance, be how to facilitate, but it could also be, for instance, I saw it was a little bit weird, but it's actually quite cool. They're also having a 15 minutes of brain inspiration each Thursday. Of the last one I was with, it was how do ants work together. So how do they collaborate and so on. So they inject them with a lot of inspiration around this. So that is how we develop them. And then, of course, what they primarily do, or not primarily, because it would be shot from the self-org people if I said that, but what they also do is that they need to take care that we have the dialogue around the ASDI. That was the bottom-up normative dialogue tool. So they kind of know, okay, within knowing your customers, what is it, how does that look, and how do we practice that? So that is how we do that. Simon, do you have a perspective?
Yeah, I would also say we have an extremely talented team that have created a menu card that, and again, that's what it is called, where again a champ can go in. It's basically a repository for all kind of agile or team workshops, etc. And it is very well organized with content, a contact person that can help you get started. Again, there's a self-facilitation guide, etc. And it's so yes, we really try to live self-facilitation and self-organizing to the strongest intent, you can say. So we try to give the possibilities for squads to be truly self-organized. So
yeah, and just a comment, Simon. So when I have seen agile coaches, been one myself also, really excel. There's nothing more exciting to see a squad where 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 are helping each other to organize their work. So that is what we're aiming for. So not one person doing it, but maybe we can help each other talk about how we succeed with our goals in the morning, or maybe we can reach out to our stakeholders and so on. So that is also what we are trying to do here, but to do it in a structured way. Because it takes some training, and totally acknowledge that is needed.
Yeah, so there's a question related, what is the purpose of implementing Agile Champions, and how do you ensure that the volunteers don't end up having an extra job as a Scrum Master? I think you partly answered that question, but if you want to add something more to that, or do you feel that it's...
Simon, would you like to start?
Sorry, I just need to repeat it. It fell out.
It's on the screen, but what is the purpose of implementing Agile Champions, and how do you ensure that the volunteers do not end up having an extra job as a Scrum Master?
I think everyone leans in and understands this is a whole squad responsibility, and I think that is again the what have been communicated since we had this new COE model, where we again have centralized the agile coaches, at least in these 4 chapters. So it was, of course, a tough transition, because you used to have an agile coach nearby you could call, can you come help me, we are struggling, right? And I think it was important to do that exercise, because that showed they have a need, or they need to figure it out themselves. And when we then introduced the Agile Champions fairly soon after, I think it came all naturally that we have people that are more motivated, that are more natural facilitators. They are curious about the process and improvements. So for most part, and for most squads, they come naturally. They again emerge from each squad. There are still a few squads out there that have not selected an Agile Champion yet. Not sure why yet. They are still looking for the final purpose, but it's not seen as a burden anymore. Again, and because we also offering these both these community events, and you have this repository. So yes, you are definitely doing an extra thing, but it's for the most part benefiting, right? The same way, again, you will see the return on investment fairly quickly. And again, we have these squads that are doing this now have been part of, again, as Christian said, they have done 100 sprints now. That is was celebration last month. So it's not new to them. Again, everyone knows the language, everyone knows the structure, everyone knows our strategic process, the QPR. So what an Agile Champion have to do now is all the fun part, improving the small things around it. We took the heavy burden, I would say, us agile coaches doing a lot of training and explanation in the beginning, right? So, but that's in place now. We don't have to explain why BWOW exists and why our field guide exists. That have been accepted now. So we are in another place now, and hence we have this different role now. At least that's my perspective. I don't know, Christian, if you agree.
I think we kind of move on, we switch gears a little bit.
Okay, that's completely okay. Yeah.
So ITIL and process management, which specialized chapter are they placed in? I don't know if you understand the question.
They are not in a specialized chapter. They are in a area we call Turn to New Tech. That is one of the activities where we collaborate with other departments, also imposing change to the organization. But there is, and I was actually, for instance, automated test or release or whatever it is, that's not under us. That is in a more tech-focused area, and they hold their own, agenda for change, and it's something that first of all we would like to collaborate with even stronger, because we also are crossing that let's call it path together with them. But it's not a specialized chapter. It's a whole area where there sits a lot of architects and so on also looking at this.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna promote the one who are kissing up and say, great presentation, loved the transparency. Could you please share the early steps to bring business and IT closer together as one tribe? What were the first experiments?
That's you, Simon, because you were there.
Yeah. So again, the experiment was actually the Big Bang, right? So we didn't, we had the proof of scale, as you alluded to, Christian, earlier. So we tried this out in 5 tribes first, to kind of see how the model would be working. So we didn't go full scale. We had 5 tribes, so that's around, what is it, 600-700, yeah, up to 1,000 people, I think. That we tried this out with, but they still went all in. Again, it was not a matter of we could do it 50% or 60%. These tribes were created on equal conditions as we did later on with the whole development organization. So you can say there weren't any specific small experiments to validate if we go this and this. Again, we made a Big Bang, and I don't know, Christian, if you have another perspective.
Yeah, but it started kind of with a small bang and then a very big bang, right? Yeah.
But
no,
we didn't do it. We didn't do it incremental. We didn't take 3 squads first, and then 6 squads, and then 9 squads. We took 5 tribes, and then we took 28 tribes at the end.
Yeah. So, a full role and
what was it that you actually did? Did you put people from the business in the squads, or as product owners, or as tribe?
Yeah. So it's okay. Let's nerd a little bit out in that. So the 4,500 people, they did something else before getting into the squad or the tribe, and what they was able to was actually to have a first and second priority of what they would like to do. And that was in regards to the 3 roles: POCLAX, PO, CL, a chapter lead, and AC's agile coach. So we had nearly 1,200 interviews where people could come to talk with one of the TLTs around what would they like to do. And then I think it was 90% of them, or 85 or something, had their first priority. So that was for Puglax or the leadership layer just under TLTs. And in regards to cross-functional, the squads, it's business analysts and so on working together with developers. They were actually placed in the area normally where they were kind of working, but it was a hard a distribution of the people actually.
But yeah, so we ask everyone basically to apply for a new position. Again, the Puglax we interviewed, the cross-functional teams were asked which area do you want to work in. Most preferred the traditional area, but again the landscape had changed, so you had to select a main tribe and a secondary tribe as well, I think. So that's how the exercise went. There weren't any small experiments, and I think that was probably a good thing, because what I see, what at least a very important aspect as I see, is that we reduce the technical depth with this exercise. Again, I know we reduced the layers, we simplified the organization, but we also have a much more, again, I think you said, Christian, how many roles did we reduce? So in the past we had like, was it almost
3,600?
Yeah, role and titles, etc. in the bank, and now we have around 20. So we have it's such a simple, lovely structure, right? Again, in the past we had so many project managers or maze runners, as we called them, because we needed project managers to navigate our complex organization, but we don't need that to a degree anymore.
So this one, I was not at the beginning of the presentation. Did you mention where this transformation was started, C-level or somewhere else? And judging from its 2 upvotes, I assume that it wasn't crystal clear. So if you could maybe elaborate a little.
So I was actually looking into launch reporting and so on methodology the other day. Started with our upper management being trained in Agile, being inspired about what is this, and then embarking together with BCG, creating the cross-functional transformation teams that Simon was talking into with BCG, people that had tried this before, also senior partners from BCG supporting our very senior executive leaders on how to steer this. And then it had some streams of tasks. For instance, there was the redesign, where should people sit, being one stream, and other necessary streams, for instance, finding out how do we find out how to handle ABR, QBR, and so on. So that was what happens. The beauty of it was that it was not only TLTs that had new roles, but basically also our domain leads. So for instance, PC, that was also being led by the business responsible domain lead and the IT domain lead for that given area. So that means that they were also beginning to work much more close together on, it's called level 3 in Danske Bank, which is quite high level. If you are L3, you have probably from 500 to 1,000 people under you or something like that. So it is very senior leaders that was helping together with this.
Nice. So have you dropped waterfall totally now?
No. We live in a both and world here. and we need to do, and we are forced to. Some things have a deadline and a fixed scope. They do. We are under in a business where there is FSA, a lot of things that just need to be delivered to a given point in time. So if you look at it with the eyes of this is not agile or whatever it is, then a lot of our activities that we are running would probably be, are you sure you are delivering incrementally here and so on? Now we are probably not, but we are doing as much as we can. We don't have project managers in the development organization, but we do have something on a leadership level over that we call theme integrators. That if, for instance, a tribe cannot deliver a theme, then we have theme integrators that kind of help orchestrating the delivery from multiple tribes. And that could be a little waterfallish understood, but basically it's a matter of doing both agile and deliver to a certain scope and time at the same time.
Yeah. So can you give an example of what were some steps you took to implement objectives and key results in such a big setup?
I mean, would you do that or should I?
You can start and I can chip in.
Because this is so starting with how did we communicate the transformation, and it was very, very clear that now also remembering the music theme, this is something we need to practice. And especially OKRs needed to practice, and it's just we took a giant leap in order to be more outcome focused when we had the new organization actually. But what we did was we introduced our QBR, quality business review memo, that each squad needed to hand in each quarter, of course. Looking backwards, how is it going to achieve our goals? Looking forward, what is our direction and when are we there? So we had in the beginning train the trainer sessions from Central Point. I can't remember, Simon, if you were one of the train the trainer people, but you could have been. You can say that yourself afterwards. Training the tribe coaches and what is this and so on. And we had that with a lot of things. And then tribe coaches in each tribe had the responsibility to spread the good message out. And this is also where, we had empowerment, but how aligned do you think that breakdown was? Not super aligned. So that is where we had quite large improvements lately, because we had the opportunity to see, okay, now we have a specialized chapters that is finding out how is our stance on doing it the right way. So all of us is talking about objectives and key results in an aligned way, and also placing it in the right tools, so we actually can see how it's progressing and so on. We're still doing that actually. Simon?
Yeah, I think you captured the main points, right? And I think that's an overarching theme with train the trainer sessions, because we want this to spread out organically into the tribes. So we typically had train the trainer session centrally with the tribe coaches. Tribe coaches then trained the agile coaches. The agile coaches then trained the squads and the product owners. So we don't have that set up today, but we are still trying to again make sure that there are, again, especially when we onboard new product owners, which are typically very connected to the OKRs. They are of course introduced to OKR writing. Again, today I worked with 40 new product owners joining the bank, and one of the topics we are spending time on is writing OKRs and learning to do it. So again, it is something we just have to keep onboarding people into. And yes, it's also a maturity journey. The KRs weren't probably the best KRs in the first rounds, right? But we are learning that now. Again, I have a hard time finding improvements to the KRs we see, because they are all measurable. They are all really inspiring objectives now. So definitely,
and with a bit of luck, outcome focused also.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, but that's one of the things that we're actually working rigorously with right now. That is because the KRs or OKRs we introduced in the beginning was only introduced from tribe level and down. So what we have doing lately is aligned the way we're doing it horizontally. So this is how we want to do it. And then we've connected with what we call strategic building blocks down to daily work. So there's a direct connect with everything we do from strategy to daily work. So that was introduced 2 months ago or something, or 3 months ago. So that is still a work in progress.
So, starting to be short of time here, but the last question from Spotify: did you bring the innovative culture as well?
Can you just echo what was that again?
From Spotify.
Yeah, I know what was the innovative culture. Just it's a long time I saw in the video, so. But no, if we just look at the words, at least no, we did not bring any structure in, at least to say you have a week of innovation every 12th sprint or whatever it may be. Again, this was tribes were fully empowered to find ways to create innovation. Again, the tribe I was in for around 2 years, we started again looking at the needs. So we started having learning Thursdays every month. So instead of because that worked for us. So that was a Thursday where no meetings could be booked. And then there were inspirational talks or topics or workshops that you could then join or contribute to. So again, each tribe have kind of developed their own little culture, at least towards this, topic here. I don't know if there are any other aspects of it that I'm missing.
Yeah, but it also you kind of get in apex of vertical focus and horizontal alignment here. But because of course a lot of tribes is running all kinds of inspirational sprints and so on, or finding out how could we do things in a new way and so on, and that is good. And we want to step on each other's shoulders every time we have a learning. So that's kind of the schisma we are in. That of course we can be innovative and find out new ways to work and so on, but we also need to share or distribute good learnings. So that actually that creates a need of being a little rigid on how we at least document good learnings when it comes to processes, at least, and of course being very focused on finding out how can we reach customer needs and so on. They have all the freedom in the world to do that, but we don't have a structured way to do it, as I kind of think there are in Spotify, but I don't know about it, Joachim, and it doesn't sound like Simon does either.
Yeah, okay. So,
but I'm just guessing, Simon.
It's right. Let's move on.
Accidentally marked one as well. So, yeah, probably last question, if you feel that you haven't answered it already, but what was one of the toughest challenges with scaling?
That was and still is power. And that is something that we are getting better and better and better to handle, and finding out, because every time we scale, people that had power before need to share it with other people. So they have their own view of how to scale or solve issues or problems or deliver value or whatever it is. But we are actually beginning to have very fruitful dialogues around this, and it's on all levels. We're becoming better at it, and also in regards to training. So when we are having conflicts in regards to scaling, that could be, I don't want to have a tribe coach, or I don't want to run a Scrum, or whatever it is. I don't want to do a QBR memo. We're having good dialogues around it, and are saying to ourselves that being in conflicts like that is also something that we are improving on. So it don't feel bad or negative to be in that kind of dialogues any longer. It did in the beginning. Every time we had a conflict before, the tribe coach was the loser, because they were the one coming in with new ways of working. But now they have a quite significant support from other tribe coaches, but of course also from the COE in general. And we kind of know how to we facilitate those dialogues.
Okay, so we have to wrap up there. One question that went unanswered was, did you consider SAFe? Any reflections on pros and cons of SAFe versus the Spotify model? And I posted a link to a video that I did on exactly that some time ago, so you can check that. We answered this one. So in Agile, focus recently have changed from tools and processes. Now it's more on good product practices. Well, that's for another seminar, maybe. We have a breakfast seminar on the product model, if anyone's interested. And there's a question also about the coaching roadmap. What activities would you, for example, have on this coaching roadmap, and how do you work with it? But we talked a little bit about that. But yeah, that's input for future webinars or articles maybe for you guys. Thank you, everyone who attended, and of course, a special thanks to Christian and Simon for a great and transparent presentation. I learned a lot. I hope you did as well. Thank you.
See you around.
Thanks.
Stop the recording.